Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, instead of talking about a movie for the movie, I want to talk about a movie for the marketing. And specifically, we are going to look at the movie The Blair Witch Project, which came out in 1999 and is considered one of the first movies to have kind of viral mass marketing, and it led people to believe that the story was based on true events and that the three students in the film were actually missing and or dead. Now, if you're not familiar with The Blair Witch Project or you've never seen the movie, I'll give you a little bit of a summary. It's basically a found footage movie of three college film students who are trying to document this urban legend in their town of a witch that lives in the woods, and she was banned there because she drained the blood of children, and there was like a serial killer who lived in the woods who also killed a couple of children, and they thought maybe he was influenced by the witch. Basically, the whole story is based around this mythical witch creature, and that these three students are going to try to go find proof of that. They're only in the woods for a couple of days, and slowly they start to get more and more frustrated with each other. They're very blatantly lost, they're low on food, they're just hiking around the woods, and creepy things start to happen. They start seeing these sort of witchy symbols in the woods, they're hearing noises. At one point, one of the kids goes missing, and they end up finding bloody teeth on the ground. And then eventually, the movie ends with Heather and Mike are trying to find their friend Josh, who's gone missing, and they stumble into the presumed house of the serial killer who used to live in the woods. Something unseen grabs Mike and pushes him away, while Heather, the girl, ends up finding Mike looking dead at a corner, kind of standing very still, very creepy and eerie. She hears something, the camera drops, she screams, and it cuts to black. And before the movie begins, we get a black screen with text on it that describes, in October of 1994, these three film students go out into the woods in Maryland, and they aren't heard or seen from again. The footage is then found a year later, and presumably the movie we are seeing is the footage the students shot. Now, the entire movie is written, directed, and edited, pretty much birthed, created, and made by two longtime friends and film students. Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez would watch horror documentaries about, horror movies that had been made. They watched missing persons shows all the time, those unsolved mystery shows, and they found that unexplained or creepy footage from real life people was scarier than any other horror movie that they've seen. And it's mainly because it's real life things happening to real life people that are unexplained. I'm sure you guys have seen YouTube videos, the 5 craziest videos taken before tragedy happened, or photos taken right before someone died. It's kind of creepy and eerie to see film or hear audio or see photos, and knowing that the events that took place are either unexplained, the people were found later missing or dead, and it's sort of this unnerving feeling that you get watching these stories, because even though they're being told to you and presented as a story, it's still real life people and real unexplained mysteries happening. And that was really the feeling that Myrick and Sanchez wanted to invoke with this movie. And they kind of tossed the idea around for a couple of years. They always referred to it as that Woods movie. We should really make that Woods movie. So they really started with just making up their own urban legend with the Blair Witch, and they made it just believable enough that when you told the story, it sounded like something that, could have been an urban legend. And everything that Sanchez and Myrick did from there on out was very particular and thought out. They knew what they wanted to do to achieve this movie. Now, granted, it is an independent indie film. They went around and collected funding for themselves, but they really didn't have a big budget. I saw conflicting reports, but the range for their budget for the movie is kind of seen as anywhere from $35,000 to $60,000. And the movie was only shot over the course of 8 days, and only 20 hours of footage was concluded. It took them a couple of days to get the movie edited down, and they got it to about 82 minutes. And as they were making edits, they would go to kind of small independent film festivals and show their movie. Now, here's where the marketing really started to kick off for this film. They wanted people to believe in the legend of the Blair Witch. And this was in the mid to late 90s, so the internet, while it was there, was not the same resource that it is today. So people really couldn't just hop on Google and look up the Blair Witch to see if it was a true story or not. They had to go by word of mouth and seeing the footage that was shot. And there was even an interview from a guy who owns one of the festivals who showed the final cut a couple of different times at his festival, and he said the first time he watched it, he wasn't even sure if it was real or fake, and he remembers calling one of his friends and being like, dude, this is going to be a huge hit. I'm not sure how and I'm not sure why, but something about this movie just doesn't seem normal. So they would take their movie to these different film festivals, and they would base off of the audience reaction, kind of make changes and edits, and then, show it to a different festival. And that's how they really got it cut down to the final film that we see. They did shoot a few alternate endings after filming had already wrapped because people weren't really super sold on the ending. It's very conflicting because it really gives you nothing and you aren't sure if they're alive or dead, but that was the whole point. They wanted people to not be able to tell if this was real or fake, because thinking in the sense of realism, if something was to happen to 3 students out in the woods like this and they're getting attacked, there likely isn't going to be some very glamorous ending shot. It's going to be like what we saw, the camera sort of dropping at an angle, we hear some screams, some panting, some crying, and then that's really it. The camera dies, and that's the film that we got. So even though people were giving them advice from all different directions on how they should make edits to their film, they really stayed true to their main idea of keeping it as simple and realistic as possible. I did see a report that after all of the edits and changes were made, the final cost of the film was anywhere from $200,000 to $750,000. Once they started showing it at festivals, they were getting more and more funding to do better editing and to make the movie just bump it up a little bit more in the sense of giving it that atmosphere that they wanted. So they did collect money even after they were done filming and used that just for post-production. A good chunk of the money went strictly to post-production and putting together the movie. But after everything was said and done and this film became the huge hit that it is, it grossed nearly $250 million worldwide, and it's today even still considered one of the best independent films ever made. And the come up was really kind of a creeping crawl for the Blair Witch Project. Myrick and Sanchez were taking their film to different festivals and showing it, and along with that they were even passing out missing persons flyers. And this was just to kind of add to that question of, is this real or is this fake? They wanted to blur the lines in that sense, and passing out the flyers did just that. Now they were creating a buzz around their movie. People were going home with these flyers and showing it to their friends, and they were sort of doing their own research, and word of mouth marketing was really a big part of this project. They would put the missing posters up around the town or the festival that they were at and then take them down once the movie was over, so that way people couldn't get too much of it. They wanted to keep it sort of just like a little taste, a little appetizer into what they have to give. So filming ended around 1997, and as they started making these edits and going around to these different festivals, they wanted to sort of bump up their marketing. So they hired a marketing team that created a website for the Blair Witch Project. Now remember, this is 1998. This is not going to be a fancy, super great website, but it was just enough to really hone in on that believability. Myrick and Sanchez, being the creators, had to write themselves into the mythology somewhere, so their role for the movie was that they were 2 documentarians who were hired by the missing children's families to collect the film, put it into a way that they could show the public, and spread awareness of their children's missing case. And this was kind of in hopes that it would bring light to the situation and people would have information on their children. So that was the reason that they had for owning the film that they had. And as they were editing, they would start releasing little snippets or tidbits onto the website. The website had the missing persons report. It showed physical photos of the film and the cameras that were found, so the things that were found on the scene when they did discover the footage. And as they would edit, they started releasing police photos that were said to be photos that were being held by the county sheriff's office in that town in Maryland, and that they had just gotten permission to post them online, and these were supposed to be some of the still photos taken on these students' cameras, and just to kind of see what was happening to them leading up to their final days. So Sanchez and Myrick kind of treated this whole series as almost like an ongoing investigation, and new discoveries would be made and the website would be updated, or they go to festivals and present the movie and show different clips that weren't seen before. But they were very good about not answering questions. They never really did interviews. They didn't do interviews till years and years later about the movie because they were afraid if you talk too much, you start to give away too much and it loses that lore. They even started a newsletter email chain where they would send newsletters to people who signed up for the email and give them updates on the investigation and how it was going and anything that the sheriff's office had to report. And this started even getting the movie covered by actual news outlets. They started talking about the film as sort of just an unknown found footage movie that they weren't sure if it was based in truth or fiction. And Heather Donahue, Michael Williams, and Joshua Leonard, who were the 3 students in the film, used their actual names in the film. So those are the actors' names and the characters' names. And the missing persons reports looked like real missing persons reports, and they were based off real people. And Heather Donahue even said, again, years later, no one in the movie did any interviewing in like the 90s. They waited until after the movie had been fully released and everyone realized it was fake. But Heather Donahue said that people were sending her mother sympathy cards and, like flowers and stuff like that, because there was an obituary written for her. The students were presumed dead. Their bodies hadn't been found for over a year, and based on the footage, it looked like they probably didn't survive. So Myrick and Sanchez had their obituaries made and had it put in the papers in that town. And this really just started to solidify the story with people. Heather said it was kind of weird seeing her own obituary written in her, I think she was 24. So she said it was kind of odd to see that, and she knows it made her family feel kind of weird because she said basically she had to play dead. She couldn't go around telling people that she was alive and making a big announcement about it because that would ruin the lore of the film. So this was really something that everyone, even the actors, were behind and understood the importance of not giving away too much. Donahue said while most of it was good and people were, genuinely sympathetic towards her family and parents believing that she was dead, she also said there was some backlash and that people would come up to her on the streets and be like, wow, I wish you were dead. I want my money back. Don't be that kind of person, by the way. But yeah, people were genuinely angry when they found out the students were alive and healthy and the whole thing was faked. So that was a little bit of the negative pushback we saw with this type of marketing. Because while they weren't specifically trying to convince people that the film was real, they simply weren't telling people it was fake, leaving it up to the viewer's imagination. And if you chose to wholeheartedly believe that this film was real and those students are dead, I can understand why you'd be a little bit frustrated to find out later on that it isn't. And they did receive backlash like that. Some people were hugely disappointed to find out that all of this had been fake and wanted their money back for going and seeing the movie. While other people, although, you always a little bit want it to be true, they were still so impressed with the story and genuinely freaked out by the movie that they really didn't mind that the whole thing was fabricated. It was just so well done, it didn't leave a lot of room to be angry. And Sanchez and Myrick really didn't expect their movie to take off on the big screen. It did show in some theaters in the late 90s, and its release was in July of 1999, and it was only released into select theaters. But so many people had already heard about it that their website was getting flooded with emails on people asking, it's not in my town, where can I go to see it? How can I see this movie? And so they started telling people, if you want to see it in your theater, call your local theater and let them know that you want to see this movie. And after they made that announcement on their site, they saw so many requests for their movie in different movie theaters across the country. So this word of mouth marketing and film festivals really created a family of people who loved the idea of this Blair Witch Project. So the fact that they were able to basically do viral marketing so successfully in the 90s just shows you how well done this whole movie was for them and how they really stuck to their guns and knew what they wanted to do and how they wanted to spread the attention of their movie, and they successfully did it. And Myrick and Sanchez have even said they never really went into this thinking that they were marketing their movie. They wanted to create a fully immersive experience for their fans and interact with people, answer questions. They wanted to kind of create this buzz and just have that feeling of being they're the directors, they're the creators, they're the writers. And they want to have these interactions with their fans and really create something that's going to wow people. And it just sort of happened to turn out to be one of the greatest marketing campaigns for a film ever. When the movie was being played in theaters, Sanchez and Myrick would give them permission to make duplicates and just pass them out. And they said that they used to work at theaters, and they know sometimes the kids who work at the movie theaters for $5 an hour will, copy the movies and give them to their friends or bring them home to watch. And they knew that that was going to happen with their film, and they encouraged it. They wanted it to get out and for people to see it. And for someone to just sort of have a bootleg copy of this movie, it only really feeds into that found footage scenario that they were creating. So they really didn't care what you did with their film. They weren't trying to, copyright claim anyone. They were really like, here it is, take it and go. And it's all of this put together that really makes the marketing for this movie so successful. It's still considered one of the best marketing campaigns ever done, and it was sort of done by accident and during a time where relying on the internet and viral marketing wasn't a thing. The movie was recently redone, and the people who redid the movie said that they knew they could not market it the same way, that there would just be no way to mimic what the first movie did. I believe they did still make a website for it and everything, but you can't recreate that magic that they did in the first one. And this is also something that we probably will never really get to see again, just because it's so easy nowadays to quickly debunk things that aren't fake. There are subreddits that are just dedicated to solving mysteries and crimes and looking into things, and there's just no way to really have this much lore behind a movie without giving away too much, and people are always going to dig and dig and dig until they can find the truth. So this kind of happened during a sweet spot in technology, that they were able to do this, and the internet really helped this movie's advertisement. It might not have been as successful if there wasn't this sort of mystery behind it. But if this movie had come out just even 5 years later, it would start to kind of be harder to advertise as we started seeing technology quickly growing. I think Google as a search engine came out only like a year or two after the movie itself, so it was starting to become easier and easier to debunk things and sort of see what's true and what's fake. And this movie was really created just in the perfect time for it. This also was a huge inspiration for future found footage movies, like the Paranormal Activity series, which is all based on security cameras and found footage. This was something that we hadn't really seen before. We had a little bit, but nothing to this extent and nothing with this much hype behind it. There are countless articles and people praising the marketing for this movie, and some people even say the marketing for the movie and the story behind it is scarier than the movie itself. Watching the movie nowadays, I can understand why it might not be the scariest thing that you've ever watched. You really don't see the witch, you don't see any violence or anything super freaky, but that's the whole point. It's mimicking those other found footage films that we see, like on YouTube and other places, where you see footage and it's sort of underwhelming, but it's the story behind it and the situation that people are in that gives you that uneasy feeling and just not really being sure if something's going to happen or not. Whether or not you like the film as a horror movie, you cannot deny how successful the marketing was behind it. Sanchez and Myrick have both said that they never expected the movie to take off the way it did and for it to become kind of like a classic horror movie. It's still one of the top grossing indie movies ever created. It's one of the best found footage, if not the best found footage movie ever made. It's just an incredible movie all around that holds a lot of great awards and honors that I think it rightfully deserves. Myrick and Sanchez saw an opportunity, they took it, and they knocked it out of the park. So yeah, I really just wanted to talk about that for a little bit. It's something that I've had brewing around in my brain for a little while, because this is one of those movies that anytime it's brought up in discussion, you have to admire just how well it was marketed. And, you know, the lead up to the movie being released in theaters was just something that we've never seen before, and we probably won't get to see anything like it again. What other movies are out there that you really enjoyed their marketing or the story behind it, or maybe there was lore released before the movie did? I love stuff like this and looking at like the story behind things, so if there are other movies you guys want me to look into, please let me know. You can leave a comment down below or head over to my Instagram, What a Horror. I'll be making a post about this video as well. But as always, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you want to see more videos. I put out new videos every Friday. And until next time, stay spooky.